today.
Wait, before we go into the first story, can you tell us again the game that you played on the Switch that you bought for $1.40?
Sudoku, relax.
Sudoku. Okay, let's move on now.
Okay, that was very important. Google Stadia. So, Google's struggling streaming service Stadia is shutting down its internal game development studios. Google will close two of the Stadia games and entertainment studios located in LA and Montreal, Canada, and it is impacting 250 employees. Head of the game development studio, Jade Raymond, will also be departing in this move. Now, how's this shaping up? Do we feel like Stadia is going to survive and has legs beyond this year?
This is not a good sign. Now, I don't know if it was ever a good idea to do internal development in general, but this is not a good sign. Now, I think obviously they're not going to put a negative spin on this. They're like, Stadia's still fine. Stadia is not fine. Stadia is not going to be around within the next, I think, 18 months. I think at some point they will rebrand it. And I think they're already doing this. They're just essentially, I think they're just going to try to offer the tech to other businesses as say, hey, you can use our streaming tech kind of thing, and not essentially sell their own service. That's my thought of it, the way they'll go, because the tech works, by all accounts. I haven't tried it myself. I don't know when it was meant to launch in Australia. I think they announced that recently, didn't they?
No.
They didn't? Oh, was I thinking something? Was I thinking Amazon Luna or something?
Maybe Xbox?
I thought Stadia, they had announced that they were expanding to Australia.
No, they've never said anything about going to Australia. I checked the other day as well.
Okay.
Because I would be keen to try it. I'd be keen to try it, but yeah, it doesn't look like they're going to... They're probably never going to make it to Australia at this rate.
Well, yeah, in that case, then no. It's just like, by all accounts, it works really well. And apparently... Cyberpunk, like a lot of people saying that's actually a really good place to play it if you don't have a high-end PC. It's gone really well for them. So that's almost like one of the mini success stories in recent times for Stadia is Cyberpunk.
Yeah, and they promote that. Like as part of this release, Phil Harrison, the guy who heads up Stadia for Google, actually said, the response that people had to Cyberpunk on Stadia, and for that to be clearly better than the console version. Like unanimously, people saying it's better than the console version. And I'm talking about PS5 and Xbox Series X. They want to head down that direction. But yeah, I totally agree with you, Swinny, that this is a terrible sign. Google, when they launched Stadia, the first thing that people said is, Google has a terrible track record of starting things with a big bang, putting a lot of money in, and if it doesn't click, they just turn it off. Maybe that's not a bad thing, but if you invest stuff into Google, man, you can get your ass kicked. Google Glass, all this other kind of stuff that they've launched and they've just killed. So,
I think it's still cool though that they innovate and they push these things and experiment and learn from. It's good that companies do that.
Yeah, I still wonder if the timing's right for streaming games, like especially if it's just a dedicated service. Like, I think Xbox strategy of having it as a supplementary service is really, really smart. Yeah. Because no one feels like, I'm only solely relying on that. It's, hey, this is an additive thing. Great. Having a dedicated service, I mean, like, we have pretty crappy internet in Australia generally, with exceptions. Whereas in the States, it's very lumpy. It's like a lot of people have really, really good internet, and it's probably most of the people working with Google. But when you go to the Midwest, the South, like their internet is bad, if not worse than ours in Australia. So, they're hitting those people up. And I've heard a lot of stories where people have tried to use it and it doesn't work and it's a pain in the ass. And yeah.
Well, that's going to be the biggest barrier in the end. You can have the coolest technology. If you can't deliver it to people, tough luck.
Yeah,
especially... And we're probably not quite there yet.
Yeah, especially if it's a dedicated service. And
yeah,
I'd probably say just one tweak to what Swinny's saying. For me, like, I still feel that, this makes so much more sense for them to get into bed with Nintendo and, like, do a partnership where, like, this is how they deliver streaming on Switch. Like, Stadia on Switch, to me, is pretty
cool.
Pretty compelling proposition. Because, as Swinny said, like, I don't think anyone has said another streaming service is better than Stadia. Maybe it's the equal, but it's certainly not better than Stadia. And I think that's one thing that like Nintendo really needs to leverage for next gen games to come to the Switch.
I think at this point, though, they should not associate any of that, if that ever happens, with the Stadia brand, because the Stadia brand it's just bad news at this point. They can.
They'll
I
probably
think they
rebrand.
should use the tech, but to say, "Oh, it's powered by Stadia" or something like that's not.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to help anyone,
Yeah.
unless they really do have long term plans, and where we are, I guess, not giving them enough
Not
credit
privy
for
to
that.
it. Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, just anything associated with Stadia, I'm sure there's people out there that do love it. So I don't want to crap on the service that they like.
I don't know. We're
But
not
just-
crapping on it. It's
But
just
just in the general consensus, just Stadia has just been such a flop.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. And the thing is that I think games. It's not just the game streaming part of it. We talked about it before. It's the way that they launched it. They launched it in this half-assed beta that didn't have, 3/4 of the features that they had announced.
Yeah.
That the service is going to offer. They had a pitiful amount of games. They had the whole thing of you having to purchase the games as opposed to something like Amazon Luna's approach, where it's a subscription service. And I know they've got differences there now, and they're getting better with that stuff. But it was just all round. They just failed it. They really did.
Yeah. We're totally not crapping on it. But
no, we're not. And look,
no, I'm
love
sorry, I'm
it.
sorry.
We're not. And I think love it or hate it, there's one thing that I think everyone agrees on, and that's the fact that Jade Raymond is freaking hot. Just woo.
Mike,
From like 10 years ago when she was working on Assassin's Creed. Oh my god.
Mike, I thought, no joke. Before the podcast, we do a bit of chat about what we should do. I'm thinking to Mike, I'm like, Mike, don't say anything about Jade Raymond because that's just going to make us look bad.
No, look. And
I gave you too much credit.
Sorry. I had a crush on her like 10 years ago or whenever that was. Like a major crush on her, and then I totally forgot about her, and she popped up again, and the name just reignited all these emotions in my head.
Okay, all right.
And I had to let it out.
But just
now I've learned to give that warning next time.
just getting back to the story though, because I mean, like, this isn't a story of Stadia ending; it's a story of their studio ending. Although like you could mount the argument quite easily, they don't need an internal studio. I still feel like that promise of cloud gaming, like everything living in the cloud and the game living in the cloud, hasn't been realized of, how you can have a really crazy innovation there. Like, I feel like if you gave that dynamic to Nintendo, they love these kind of gimmicks. Like, give them a crazy gimmick and they can come up with some really wild idea. And for me, like, having a world where, you do have like 10,000 people in it would be really, really cool. Like, in a way that is super dynamic, and because it's all like in the cloud, you can do things that you just literally cannot do currently in any form.
Like Second Life, but without needing the client.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yes.
you already have like MMOs and all that kind of stuff. But I more mean like the fact that it's all running, all the logic is running in the cloud.
Yeah,
Actually,
that's a huge difference.
means the interaction that people can have with it is just like astronomically different.
Hey, that actually reminded me, somewhat topical. Since you spoke about having a PlayStation 3 and opening it and booting it up again,
Yeah.
whatever happened to PlayStation Home? Was that that
Yeah.
virtual?
They shut it
is that still
down,
going?
but-
They shut it down. Okay,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah.
I haven't.
But it
I haven't
lasted
even
for
thought
a
about
while.
that since then.
Yeah, it lasted for a while.
It was really cool. Like just setting up
different.
your home and stuff like that was
Yeah,
different.
it was really different. Yeah, I like that's what I love about the game industry. Like, they're always willing to do crazy different things rather than just sit on their laurels. It's almost like very focused on the innovation part of it.
And I think that's awesome. And even if only 20% of these ventures succeed, I'm glad that the industry tries to do these things.
No, that's definitely true.
So
Awesome, and let's move